You would think with 17 children we could share his hurt, so many of us. But it doesn't work like that. He's going to need you in the days, the weeks, and the months to come. Keep working with him, keep praying for him. In order to really explain what I meant earlier about this woman being an angel sent directly by God, it is necessary for me, if you will, just to go back 45 years to June 4th of 1967. And at that time, we had our birth mother, Nellie Ruth Dixon. And on this day, on a Sunday evening, my mother and my father went to a place called Shelby, Mississippi. And my daddy was preaching in the church of a good friend of his, Elder Payton. And I wasn't there, but I understand that while he was preaching, she collapsed and died. This man, I didn't know how much he was hurting. I had an opportunity to spend a week with him in March, and he explained to me how much that hurt him. How when he had to drive home after he's lost his wife, the mother of his 16 children. Children from 6-month-old Sheila to 20-year-old Walter Jr. He hurt. And a total of 17 people were hurting. The father and the 16 children. But I got to tell you, I really hurt. Because I love my mother. And my sister, Wilma, she came to our office a couple of years ago, and I introduced her to our office manager, and she said, my brother Ronnie was a mama's boy. I never heard that. Unfortunately, I couldn't argue with that. I was a mama's boy. And I was her 7th child. And she used to always tell me, boy, you're my 7th child. She said, you're special, and you're gonna be somebody. And so, when I got the call that my mama was dead, it hurt me so bad that I didn't know what to do. Somebody said earlier, don't give up on God, but I did. I could not believe that a good God would take a woman from her 16 children, particularly her 7th child. So I was mad, and I was mad for a good little while. And so we're talking about a family that was really hurting. And so the question that was in the air at the time, is there a bomb in Gideon?
Preach, Uncle Bone.
And like Isaiah, Irene Gilbert heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who shall go for us? And this little short woman with the beautiful smile and the contagious laugh, she was short of stature, but she was tall on love. She was tall on compassion. She was tall on faith. She said, Lord, here I am, send me. And so this little woman came in, and she helped to heal the gaping wound in our family. And how did she do it? Well, I'm going to ask you in your own time to read 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. Some call it the love chapter, but I call it the Irene Gilbert Dixon chapter. this woman was. She was pure love. Not only did she love her 17 children, she loved everybody they brought home. She loved the girlfriends and the boyfriends. She loved the wives and she loved the husbands. And guess what? I found it out more recently, even when they break up, when they ex-sister-in-laws and ex-brother-in-laws or ex-son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, she was still calling them. This woman would not give up on people. She was pure love. And because of Irene Dixon, and I've had my cry, believe me. I was in the car yesterday and I broke down crying. I've been doing pretty good. But because of Irene Dixon, I know a little bit more than I did 45 years ago. I know that now what my father, and she always tried to tell us, God is good, and is good all the time. He was good in 1967 when we lost our first mother. He is good in 2012 when we lost our second mother. God is good. The second thing I learned from her is that God promised never to leave us alone. And I learned that he always keeps his promise. And finally, I learned that trouble doesn't last always. I learned that though we are crying now, and let me tell you, folks, it's all right to cry. I believe the Bible tells us that when Jesus learned of the death of Lazarus, Jesus wept. So it's all right to cry. But one thing I know now is that weeping may endure for a night. But joy, unspeakable joy, coming in the morning. And before I sit down, let me relate something to you. I hated seeing this beautiful woman laying in that hospital room for the last 3 months. It broke my heart. And I know it broke my daddy's heart too. It hurt. On March 30th, after I'd spent a week with them, and I was preparing to go back home. I'd been off work for 2 weeks. I'd lost my father-in-law the week before, and had been in St. Louis, and I'd been out of work 2 weeks. And I was preparing to go home, and my sister Beverly and I were in the hospital room. And they had us sitting up. And of course they had us hooked up to all these things. And for some reason I figured she knew I was getting ready to leave. I didn't want to leave her. And she leaned up. She leaned forward like she was trying to get up. Something told me she was saying, I don't belong here. And she tried to get up. And all the stuff came loose and the alarms went off. Me and Beverly didn't know what to do. And we were scared. And it took like it took forever for the folks to get there. And so I had to leave behind that. And I was driving home. And I drove from Tennessee to Mississippi to Alabama. And when I finally crossed the border in Georgia, I broke down and cried. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what we could do for this woman who should not have been in the hospital. But as my daddy liked to say, but God. On June 11th, this past Monday, I don't know what time they said, it was between 10 and 12 o'clock. Believe it or not, this was 45 years to the day that we buried Nellie Ruth Dixon, our first mother. On June 11th, Irene Dixon got up And when she got up, she kicked cancer to the curb. She dismissed and said goodbye to problems with thyroids and hemorrhoids and her heart condition. And she said, I'm out of here. And I believe that she went home. And I believe that at the welcoming table was Nellie Ruth Dixon. And she said, girl, come on. And she embraced her. And she said, thank you for the last 45 years. Thank you for taking care of my husband. Thank you for taking care of all of my children. And I feel good knowing that I not only have one mother up there looking out for me, intervening for me, I got two mothers. And so when people ask me the question from here on out, and when they say, how did you get over losing your mother at 12? And how did you get over losing a second mother? I will think of Irene Dixon and I will say these words. The words of an old song. Love lifted me. Love lifted me.